On episode 4 of Keynotes, Lucas Skrobot. Lucas is a communication strategist and the owner of a brand and media strategy company called Consulting LLC. He hosts a podcast called Own the Future and has also published his book titled Anchored, The Discipline to Stop Drifting. In this episode, we discuss the emerging podcast trend in the Middle East, along with tips for new content creators, and Lucas shares his experience of moving to a completely different culture and environment and setting up his company. Let's get on with the 4th episode of Keynotes with Lucas Skrobot. All right, are we good to go?
Good to go.
Welcome.
Welcome.
How are you doing?
Farrukh.
Yeah, Lucas, good to meet you finally.
It's good to be here. Thanks
And,
for coming to my place. And
Lovely place, lovely setup.
thank you. It's my wife.
And
She does all the decorating.
and-
I just look good.
yeah, and the best part is, usually I'm the one setting this up, and this time you were doing all the hard work.
I'll send you an invoice.
All right. So, for a small, background, you're a podcaster yourself, and I was thinking, wow, this is going to be an interesting one because there's going to be so much that I'm going to learn out of this. So it's kind of a selfish podcast for me.
So I'll send you 2 invoices.
Yeah, consultancy, yeah.
That's the great thing about podcasting is you get free consultancy and free networking.
Yeah.
It's like the double win, triple win.
Yeah, I was thinking of kind of a universal slogan, podcasters assemble.
Yeah.
Something like that. But I'm sure there are some events that happen around here. I'm very new to this. Everybody knows. I've just released my 3rd episode today morning. Thank
Congratulations.
you so
I saw the post on LinkedIn.
much. Yes. So today I released my. So by the way, today is 15th October that we're recording this, and I released my 3rd episode. And it's a lot to learn. It's a big journey ahead.
It's a huge learning curve.
Yeah, and we were just now talking about, pod fade phenomena.
Yes.
So let's take our people. So I think the way this podcast is going to work is that for people who want to start podcasting, they would want to listen till the very last minute because there's going to be a lot of lessons and a lot of insights into it. So let's start from the podcast. What do you call it?
Pod fade.
Pod fade. Yes. Okay. So how did that happen? Have you been through it?
Yeah, so the majority of podcasts, they start off and people think, oh, it's super easy. All I need to do is get my phone out or get a recorder and a couple mics and I can have some buddies and my friends and come around and it's going to blow up and go viral and it'll be no work. And then you realize that actually it's an incredible amount of work. There's a lot of,
No
if
doubt.
you want to have a good show, you need to put a lot of pre-production into it. And then if you want to have, an okay show, you have to learn how to master the audio, how to, you're going to have problems with the sound. You're going to have a car going past and, some people like that style. But the end of the day, it's just way more work
Yes,
than
it is.
people expect. And most podcasts, I forgot the percentage. I think it's like 80, 90, 70 to 85, I believe, % of podcasts don't make it past 9 or 10 episodes.
Wow, that is
And
so many
they fade
podcasts
out.
going under.
It is. And even now there's, and again, I don't remember the exact stats, but there's like 600,000, 660,000, probably now 700,000 podcasts on iTunes podcasts. And I think only 20-some %
Wow.
update regularly.
Wow.
And the other ones are just kind of faded.
Yeah, and I see so many, and even this is something I was going through as well. And in the beginning, we were thinking we'll release weekly, and then it'll be a lot of hustle, but we'll make it work. But then I realized, let's not get into something that I cannot commit to and continue on a regular basis. So we thought, okay, one podcast fortnightly is a good amount of frequency, at least at this point in time for me. And hopefully we can continue doing it. And then once we're at some stage, maybe we can grow it up into...
Yeah, and I think that goes for whether you're in podcasting or whether you're in YouTube, creating content, or anything in your life. You need to decide what is the frequency that you want to show up on, what is the deadline that you want to show up on, and then hold yourself accountable. Because amateurs show up when they feel like it and don't set deadlines, and professionals show up when they don't feel like it and set deadlines.
That's a great takeaway.
And that is, for any area of our lives, if we want to approach our craft and our art and our work with a level of professionalism, even if we're not professionals in that. The first step to growing is setting your frequency, making a commitment, setting a deadline, and then holding yourself through that. And maybe you're like, well, I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life. Okay, don't do it for the rest of your life, but make sure that you have a break point where you can reevaluate.
Right.
So instead of saying, well, I'm just going to do this every 2 weeks until infinity, and then you go and you start to fade, and you don't know whether you're succeeding or failing. You don't know, well, am I quitting because I don't like this anymore? Am I quitting because I'm just tired and I need to press through? And so what I have found is, if you set, okay, I'm going to do this for the next 6 months, or I'm going to give it a year, and I'm going to hold myself to this standard for a year. And after a year, after I complete what I said I would, then I can reevaluate. And if I want to quit, I can, guilt-free. But so many of us, we make these high and lofty goals, and then once it starts to fade, once we start to fail to show up and do the work, we then fall into guilt and shame. And every time we go back to approach that work, we're feeling that shame and that guilt of not following through, so our motivation's less, so we actually avoid and hide from the work that we're supposed to be doing rather than approaching it. But I believe that if we set parameters, a scope of work, right? Just like with any contract, you're setting a scope of work. This is what's going to be delivered, and this is the time frame. Anything above that scope of work, then we'll bill out a new contract. So if we set in our personal lives, in our art, in our craft, that scope of work, if you will, so that we have an out at the end of the contract that we've made to ourselves, that will then begin to create disciplines in our life where we're able to follow through. And I wrote about this in my book, Anchored: The Discipline to Stop Drifting. I wrote about, the whole book is about how can we be productive with our lives, not just busy. How can we actually reach and fulfill our purpose and our destiny in our lives? What are some of the practical skills? Because I thought that life was going to be this adventure. And really, life is an adventure.
It is.
But what is an adventure? We've not defined adventure properly. So when you think about adventure, what do you think about?
Well, discovery.
Discovery.
Yeah.
Like, what movie might pop into your head when you think adventure?
Adventure movie. I'm not a movie buff, but Back to the Future is my favorite movie.
Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Right? So it's exciting. It's
adventurous.
It's adventurous.
Discovery, of course. Time travel.
Discovery. Time travel. It's like the great unknown.
Yeah.
What, the possibilities. What could happen?
Yeah.
But really, when I think of adventure, I think of Lord of the Rings. Right? Lord of the Rings is like one of the greatest adventures of all time. I'm like, yes, if only I could live in the Lord of the Rings, that would be like awesome. But then when you really stop and do the math and examine the Lord of the Rings, you realize that over the course of the 3 years, the hobbits spend 156 days, I believe, walking. Like, they're just walking.
Wow.
I mean, they're walking all day. And not only that, they're cold, they're tired, and they have no food. Now, there's some like really big events, like exciting things, adventure that happens. I'm sorry, but if any person, millennial, baby boomer, Generation X or Z, whatever these generations are, any individual listening to this podcast had one of those adventures, they would quit and need like another 10 years of therapy. I mean, every adventure was they almost died.
Right.
Or they got stabbed by a spider. Or they got kidnapped. I mean, like, every adventure was actually trauma.
Right.
So now we have this generation who's grown up on television, on Hollywood, on Snapchat, on Instagram, on YouTube, and we have this wanderlust adventure mindset.
Basically, growing up on dopamine.
Growing up on dopamine, not realizing that the work is done in the mundane. Not realizing that adventures, the substance of adventures is really, can you embrace the grit of the mundane when it's bored, you're cold, and then when you're not bored and cold, you're afraid you're going to die.
Right.
And so that's what I write about in the book, and I write how we need to follow through, we need to make commitments, and we need to make small steps so that we can reach our goals and reach our dreams.
That's an amazing thing. And you wrote your book after you moved here in this region?
So when we moved here, I had this culture shock because I thought I was going on an adventure. I thought, I'm going to have, wow, I'm going to start a business in the Middle East. It's going to be more recognition. Like I'm going to grow even more. People are going to think I'm even more awesome. No, that's not what happened. People just forgot about me, right? Out of sight, out of mind. And you're now in a new place. You're having to build a new network. You have to build new relationships. And who are you? You're okay. You're just nobody.
Wow.
And so my world collapsed in on itself. And then in that, where we were living, everything closed down. We were living in a smaller town, and everything would close down in the afternoons. Nothing would be open. But in the States, it's like, well, if you want to get an errand done, it's 2 p.m. that you want to get it done.
Yeah.
Here, you try to get something done at 2 p.m. I mean, even go down to Dira to go to the music store, get there at 1:58, and it's closed.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is going on? I'm
You
like,
gotta wait
I forgot where I live.
Yeah.
I forgot where I live. And so I had this algorithm set up in my mind of if I am busy, if I am moving, if I am doing something, then I'll be successful. Instead of realizing success isn't being busy, success is being fruitful. How do we live lives that are productive and fruitful? And there's a big difference between being productive and getting a lot of stuff done.
Right.
And so it was in this process I began to just take 15, 20 minutes a day and write and try to process this huge life change that I was going through, realizing that my algorithm for life was wrong. It was broken. And so that clash of culture really exposed that. And so I started writing it then, and I didn't take my own advice. I didn't ship my work. I didn't follow through because of fear, right? I was afraid of, that's not good enough. Constant revisions until it's perfect. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. And so I finally shipped it, and it changed. It came out of a change in my life, a change in perspective. Is a manifesto written to myself, a letter written to myself to remember. And if you're in that place, kind of searching, trying to figure out, especially, really, I wrote it for my younger self. So I wrote it as, in my late 20s, as a letter to myself. Like, if I was 23, if I was 25, what would I want to know to save me years of pain and frustration? So if you're in that place, the book is for you.
Excellent. So, interesting, because I spend a lot of time with so many people exactly discussing these things. And I work, in my day job, I work with a lot of people who are sort of programmed to make excuses. So,
the whole world, right?
Yeah, so I basically train sales staff. And the moment you talk to them, okay, what's happening to your numbers? What's happening to your pipelines? Oh, customers are not available. I don't have enough pipeline. And, I had a perfect case for X product, but then, the people at the back end, they are not helpful. Nobody cares about us.
It's always someone else's problem.
It's always someone else's problems. And then there's the productivity issue. There's the time management issue. So, even if I do a course on the 80-20 rule and the productivity and all of those things. And then everybody's scratching their heads and like, seriously, really? We'll have to rethink everything. And I say, yes, because you've been doing it wrong the whole time.
Wait, so then you go like, well, are you satisfied with what you're doing now?
Yeah.
No. Well, then maybe you should rethink everything.
You should rethink everything.
No, that's not a good idea.
Yeah. Everybody hates change.
Oh. But
if you don't change with the change, then the change will change you.
I like that. It's true. It's true.
Yeah. So you're. I mean, right when you talk about growing and being productive and being busy. Productive and busy are completely opposite things, in my opinion.
Yes. I love the 80-20 rule.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I try to live by it because I do a 9 to 5, and then I have this podcast thing. I have a sort of a hobby music thing going on, not very regular, but whenever I get time. Some other projects, and of course I know I would never have been able to do them if I did not live that productivity lifestyle that I coach. And then I want to take this up over to you when you say about productivity versus busyness. When you said the way you explained in the book, how do people just small tips? How do people implement this in their lives? I'll give you one reference. I was recently talking to somebody who wanted to enhance their public speaking skills. And so I'm a part of a Toastmasters group at my organization. I help run that club. And I said, well, here's step number one.
Totally.
Come at 4 o'clock today. We have a meeting. Come in and just sit down as a guest. And then if you like it, if you like what you see, join it. Oh, really? 4 o'clock? No, maybe next time. So there you have it. All right?
Yeah. It's hard to talk in broad generals. How do you improve your productivity? For me in my life, I love to-do lists. And when I had a moment of free time, I would like, okay, let's add more things to my to-do list to just do them, right? But it wasn't orientated to specific goals and specific outcomes. And in the book, I also talk about the 20-mile march. Have you heard of the 20-mile march?
Yeah.
So it's the race to the South Pole. One group is just trying to go as far as they can every day when the weather's good, and when it's not good,
you halt and you
halt
basically,
But in the 20-mile march, they marched 1/4 of a degrees latitude every day, which is about 19.6 nautical miles, which is 20 miles. And they made it back there and back first, and they only did one thing. They had one goal. Whereas the Scott and his team, they were collecting rocks and they were doing experiments and they were trying to do everything at once. Where Amundsen, he was like, no, we're going to get there, we're going to get back. Well, Scott and his whole team died. They died miles away from their supply cache. All of his men died. And Amundsen made it back.
Wow.
And so with that, what kind of tied to that 80-20 rule, I think is, okay, what is your life vision? Without vision, we perish. We have to have a vision, a goal of what we're working for. And I read this quote today by Michael Hyatt, who says, if your dream doesn't require a team, you're dreaming too small.
Oh, that's amazing.
If your dream doesn't require a team, you're dreaming too small. And again, Kipchoge just broke the 2-hour marathon last week. He had 43 other pace runners to break wind for him. He had an electric car, shooting down a laser to show him where the pace was, where he needs to be running. They had a massive team for one person to break the 2-hour marathon, to break that barrier for all of mankind.
Yeah.
And so when you think even your most personal goals, whether it's writing a book, whether it's producing a piece of art, you're not doing it in a silo. And I think El Tamash actually talked about this on your podcast.
Yes.
He talked about, and I love that. And when he said that, I'm like, that's absolutely true. Like the fact that we're able to sit down today and have this conversation, and you're able to listen to this today, is because of the great company at Shure who made this microphone.
Oh, yes,
right?
Definitely.
It's because of
everything
Google.
comes together.
It's because of Bill Gates. It's because of we do not exist in silos, and we have to realize that we have a team. So when we're dreaming about our life, we have to dream so big. Like I try to dream 300 years away. Like I don't care about my 30-year vision or my 3-year vision. I'm like, how am I going to have a generational multiplication impact 300 years from now?
Yeah.
Where I'm not getting any credit.
Yeah.
Right? You're gonna forget about
thing.
me.
That's another thing. Think big and think beyond yourself.
You have to think way
beyond yourself. Yeah.
Because the most successful people in this world, we do not know their names.
Right.
We the people who have changed to society in some of the greatest ways through technology specifically.
Right.
There might be number 3 or 4 in an organization, and we never know their name, but they're filthy rich.
Yeah.
But they're dreaming beyond themselves.
Right.
Right. So I say you need to know your purpose. You need to know what you were created to do, what you were placed here to do. What is your purpose, your destiny, your massive vision for your life that scares you?
Yeah. And that's another big thing. People do not think big.
Oh.
And if you try to make them see the big picture, they get shit scared. I mean, it's like asking too much from me. I mean, why can't I just, think about myself, have a small, nice kind of a account
Well,
balance.
how's that working out for you?
So
How's
Luck-
how's that working out for you?
yeah. So yes, that's the thing. So luckily, if you think big, if you look at, like you said, in a societal way, in a ongoing, continuous way, that's when you keep on making impact.
Yes.
But if you do it one time, only one iteration,
Yeah.
then you stop there. Then even you stop as a person to grow, right? And that's something that I've seen so many. In fact, I might be fortunate or unfortunate in this part, that a lot of people that I meet in my daily job, day job, are those people who basically don't understand when you tell them. Let me give you that same example of salespeople.
Mhm.
They do not want to think 1 month beyond today. You know why? Because they have a monthly target,
Mhm.
right? So why should I? So if I have a target of bringing X amount of money into my organization on a monthly basis, the moment I cross this margin, I am actually eating up my next month's target. That's the way they like to think, and that is so sad.
It's what I call a poverty mentality. It's a poverty
Yeah.
mindset, a poverty mentality. That there,
And-
it's believing that there is lack in the world, that we're playing a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
But we're not playing a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
We're playing an infinite sum game.
Yeah.
And I need you. Like, whoever is listening to this podcast, like, we actually need you. The world needs what you have. Locked inside of you is
Yeah.
something that everyone needs.
Yeah.
And if you were to step into your purpose and your destiny, what you were designed to do, it would unlock possibilities for
Yeah.
so many others.
Yeah.
And you giving,
Yeah.
it's not going to actually take away from you.
No, not at all. In
It's an
fact, it's going to
infinite sum
enhance
game.
you.
It's going to enhance you.
Yeah. And that's one of the core purposes of this podcast, is I get to meet so many successful people who have so much to share,
Yeah.
like yourself. So I want to meet those people, and I want to bring them out on the platform, and I want people to learn from them. And these are those amazing people who like to share their stories and who like to see other people succeed as well. And that's
Mhm.
where real success is.
Yeah.
Because, the pie is big enough for everybody.
Yeah. And those people who are like, well, I don't want to go over, because then what if I don't hit it next month?
Yeah.
It's again, like you said, it's a poverty mindset, believing that,
Yeah.
well, there might be lack next month.
Yes. But then, look at the big picture. Look at what you are achieving on a year-on basis. And I mean, there are multiple ways to look at it, depending on the scenario, depending on the people. But then this was just one example. But yeah, excellent. So let's get back to your podcast setup.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about you had entered a small phase of pod fade. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yeah. I almost pod faded. It's true. I wasn't going to actually die, but I don't know. It was probably July, August. It was a kind of a rough start. A lot of people were like, get 3 or 4, 5, 10 episodes before you launch. And I didn't do that. I was like, I just need to start, because otherwise I'm never going to actually do. And so I started, and then I hit a couple roadblocks. I hit a couple bumps. Part was sound issues. Part was fear. Part was time issues. I was traveling. And so I took a pause for maybe about 6 to 8 weeks. And during that 6 to 8 weeks, I didn't stop doing the podcast. I actually just stopped producing it. I actually took 3 steps back and I said, okay, I've learned a lot.
Right.
How can I change and implement things so that I'm able to do this on a consistent basis? What do I need to adjust? So
Right.
I made some changes to enable me to record on a consistent basis.
We can see them here.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I took a week and
Yeah.
built these sound. I took months to research, not months straight, but, over the course of months. Okay, how do you sound treat a room?
Yeah.
What do you need to do? Everyone puts those like black kind of like
Right.
panels on the
Right.
walls. They're not going to do anything for you.
Right.
Because the issue that you have in your room is actually an issue with the base.
Yeah.
And that happens in the corners and the corners of the
yes.
ceiling, right? So if you're putting those tiny little thin foam
Yeah.
black things, and you're a
Yeah.
musician,
Yeah.
all that's going to do is take that little bit of treble out, which you
Right.
actually want in
You
the
want,
room.
yes.
The thing that you want to get rid of is everything in these corners. And so, I studied, I researched, and that's part of, like, I don't know if your listeners or you are familiar with the Enneagram, but the Enneagram is a psychometric personality test. And that's kind of who I am it's a 9 number system. I'm a 5, which is my sin, my vice is avarice, which is the love of knowledge or the greed of knowledge. So it's all based on the 9 deadly sins,
Right.
and what our avarice is, and then what our holy idea is. And so my vice is the love of knowledge and the greed of knowledge, and knowledge makes me feel safe. So when I feel unsafe, I'm going to withdraw, and I'm going to gather more knowledge.
I feel you. I'm in this exact same spot.
So that's what I did. So I took a long time to figure out the right fabric to use, because you can't just use any fabric, otherwise the sound wave will bounce off the fabric.
Yeah.
Finding the right insulation rock wool to use, how to build the frame, everything. So I built that out, and I was then able to regroup and put together a system that I could then easily follow. But it took me, I would have never been able to do that had I not started when I didn't know what I was doing.
And you have to start with whatever you have.
You have to start.
Yeah.
And starting is the learning process. So, there's a difference between what's typically considered a Western mindset and an Eastern mindset. In a Western mindset, it's apparent through the education system, where we sit in a room and we listen to a talking head and we gather knowledge and information, and we overanalyze and overplan. And many of us never start because we're reading another book, doing another course, going to another conference, another seminar, right?
Right.
But we never actually do the work.
Right.
But often an Eastern mindset won't think through those things, and they'll just start, and they'll just do, and they execute. So both have their pitfalls.
Yeah.
Their ditches on the side of the road, right? So we need to create a minimal viable product, or just a working plan, and then begin to execute on it. Lean startup, right?
Yeah.
Execute on it, and then we need to stop and realize, okay, there's issues in my execution.
Right.
Okay, so you stop. You go back to the drawing board. You iterate. You fix the situation. So that's what I did. But if you never start your book, if you never start your podcast, if you never start your song, you'll never get to the point to figure out what you need to fix.
Yeah,
because you have nothing to fix.
True. And I say this, I've said this a couple of times on previous episodes of podcast. I've said this on Instagram and all, and I don't hide behind it. I actually I'm proud of this learning that I had recently. So when we started, we were almost 6 or 7 episodes in the recording, and we were in the process of producing them and editing them, and we had a schedule to roll them out.
Yeah.
And I had all of those episodes sort of in various phases of production, post-production. And I had the Libsyn account set up, and I had the, all of the stuff done, website and everything. Struggled hard to make a deadline, and then suddenly, while one night burning oil, I downloaded some wrong file from some place.
Oh no!
And that crashed the entire setup. And I know I was lazy because I was really struggling with my day job as well as setting up the podcast. And what happened was, since I was working on 4 or 5 episodes together in Premiere, switching from one project to another, and on audio editing as well, so I didn't have backup.
Oh no! And your whole computer crashed.
The whole computer crashed to the point that there was nothing to recover at all.
Oh no!
And
oh no!
Yeah.
Oh no!
And a couple of
How
guests.
did you feel?
Devastated.
What was the moment like?
Devastated. I literally wanted to just throw everything out the window, call it quits, and I told my wife, who's also the producer of the show, and I said, listen, this is it. I mean, we gave it a shot. The stars are not in our favor, and that's the greatest sign.
Fatalism at its best.
Yes, let's shut shop. So then she's really good in these inspirational talks and all. So she was like, here's what we're gonna do. Tomorrow, we're recording another podcast. We don't know with who, but we are doing it.
I love that. I love that.
So the first thing that we're going to do is tomorrow morning, we're going out to figure out if we can do a data recovery with these places all around Dubai. So we were practically roaming all around Dubai, each and every shop on Sheikh Zayed Road and all. and
Hey, if
nothing
you're listening
worked.
to this podcast and you have a service like that, please
Please.
put stuff on the internet
Yes.
and
Yeah.
have good SEO so we can actually find you, because I'm so tired of driving from shop to shop to shop to shop looking for stuff when I should be able to search and find what your service and product is.
Yeah.
Continue. A little public service announcement.
All right. So
Sorry, keep going.
So, and then when we couldn't get anything done, we just made a few phone calls and we said, hey, it's a run and gun setup. We were going to do it right now. And on the way back from there, because everybody told me you cannot use that laptop or that hard drive again, ever. Even if you do a format, you don't know if it comes back, ruins your entire thing, entire day, entire effort. So on the way back, we stopped over. We had to buy the whole new setup again.
A whole new computer.
Whole new computer. So when we were then doing that, then we decided to upgrade and do a proper, like you said, proper kind of thing. So I have an obsession with having a portable setup that has to fit inside one single backpack.
Yeah.
And that's what you see over there.
Yeah.
So I made everything built around that.
And it's very Tim Ferriss-esque, right? It's like very like, and I love it. It's like if, fancy gets broken, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I admired that.
So we did that, and then the next day we were shooting an episode. And I do have all my guests to thank for it, because without their support, it would not have been possible. So the episode that I released today morning with Abe was shot, and it was an amazing podcast, and it got ruined. And I just put up an Insta story that this has happened to me right now, and I think 30 seconds or less, I get a message from Abe, dude, when do you want to do it again?
Wow.
So hats off to him.
How did it get ruined?
That same
it was that one.
Yeah. So the first attempt got ruined.
The first attempt.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he was like, happy to do it whenever you want.
Wow.
And then over next couple of days we did it again, and we released it today morning, and now we're back in sequence. And now I've completely changed the way I work. Backup is the most primary thing. Redundancy, backup, everything has to be there.
Redundancy.
Yeah.
It's so funny because oftentimes when we're trying to streamline systems, we try to cut redundancies.
Yeah.
Right? But there's sometimes, like when you're flying an airplane, you want multiple redundancies. You don't want to die. But I think it is, I don't know if funny, maybe it's sad. It's that so many people don't start because of the fear of what other people are going to think, that fear of failure. Just like Abe, you could have fallen into that fear of like, well, I blew it. I took my guest time. I blew it. But it's like people are actually way more generous than we give them credit for.
Exactly. Yes.
Like why like, and it really, I think it comes back to a reflection of ourselves. When we think that people aren't generous,
right,
it shows that we're prideful and we think that people are below us. Right. If you think about it, if I think
that's an interesting thought. Yeah.
That guest or my friends or those people on Instagram aren't going to be gracious and forgiving and loving, that my relationships are going to condemn me and call me names and call me stupid or whatever, and I'm going to be a complete failure and there's going to be no forgiveness. Aren't I making a character judgment about them that says that they are lesser, that they have a poor character?
True.
So it's like, I find that to be really
It's
funny.
Unfair, and it's unfair on your part. And you know what? Each and every guest messaged back or called back. I said, dude, let's do it again. We had fun. We liked it, and we understand. I mean, these things happen. So the idea is, yes, you learn from your failures.
Yeah.
Failures ground you.
Yeah.
Failures, they basically, it's not only about learning the lesson. It's also enhancing yourself, and also in while recovering from that failure, you get to learn so many new things.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'll give you a classic example. Maybe some listeners who are a little bit familiar with the audio production and the way the setup works, they will probably be able to relate to it. So because I'm also a musician, I have a small setup at home. And in studio setup for vocals, usually you use condenser microphones, right? Which are one of the worst sort of choices for a podcast, right? So I had shot I think 3 or 4 episodes with condenser microphones.
Mm.
And you can imagine the kind of bounce back and reflections I could hear. And I had spent hours and hours trying to clean up that audio. And podcast is all about audio,
Yeah.
right? And so then when we were upgrading the setup, I took some time and I said, listen, okay, every podcast that I hear is crisp. Every YouTube video of any podcast that I watch has these SM58s and, generally. And then I started to read about, oh my God, I've been doing it so wrong. And I felt so bad, be basically being able to understand how audio production works.
Yeah.
Still, I was making that stupid mistake.
Yeah.
But then I immediately upgraded to nice, Shure dynamic microphones, proper setup, and then immediately I had to spend way less time in post-production, especially in terms of audio,
Yeah.
right? So you learn with that.
Yeah.
You learn as you
I mean,
recover.
you want to fix it as close to the source as possible. You don't want to do,
yeah,
like,
of
again,
course.
80-20 rule.
Yeah.
Like, I do a lot of solo episodes. I probably spend I spend 80% of the time in actual pre-production, and then
Exactly.
10% of the time in actual production, I do one take.
Wow.
I don't edit. It's like if I was standing up in front of a crowd and I have one shot, that's what I have to. If I mess up, I start over again.
Wow.
And so, but having that level of work ethic and doing essentially 80-20, spending time in pre-production, a short amount of time in actual production, then my post-production, it goes by really fast.
Yeah.
Because I have that system in place.
Right. And while we're talking about it from the point of view of people wanting to start this podcast series, so what are some of the few tips that you would like to give them in terms of the equipment to get? Because that's the biggest question that they have.
I think that's the biggest question that people have, and it's the least important question.
Right, I agree. But then let's how about we give a small guideline? The easiest way to say is that start with whatever you have. If you don't have a camera, don't not start because you don't have a fancy camera. Start with your cell phone if you have to.
I think, it took me, I guess there's multiple levels. It's like, okay, are you just doing audio only? Or are you going to add a video component to it? If you're adding a video component to it, it's best to really just get a couple of iPhones.
Right.
That, iPhone 7 can shoot in 4K.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, just throw that up. It can record endlessly, where your DSLR, it's going to cut every 29 minutes and 59 seconds, which is so annoying. And so then you have to buy this up. Blah, blah, blah. So it's like, if you're looking to start, there are, hundreds of kits that you can look online. If you go to gear.io or something, where you can find podcast kits.
Right.
And people always ask that question of like, what gear do I get? It's just like, okay, get a couple SM58s.
Yeah.
They're 360, maybe 390 dirhams, $99. Get a Zoom. You don't even need a Zoom 6. You can get a Zoom 4.
Yeah.
And that's going to be plenty. A couple of cables, a couple of, just like what you did, a couple of stands, and a phone if you want a video. And so if you're starting out something simple like that, but that is not what makes, that's like asking, and someone did this at a conference. It was Stephen King, one of the greatest writers of all time, in his Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a moment to ask Stephen King something in a Q&A,
what
would you ask? Well, this guy decided to stand up and say, what type of pencil do you use? He's number 2 pencil. Oh.
Okay.
It's like, I'm sorry. The pencil, the word processor, the computer, that doesn't make you a good writer.
Yeah.
It's merely a tool. It's a pencil. So it's like, okay, have I gone to great lengths for this setup? Yeah, but that's also because I have a different proxy for my show rather than just kind of like a run and gun setup.
Right.
Like, I'm actually building something different, and because I know what I'm building and architecting that differently.
Right.
So, and the same way with writing, it's like, okay, it is a tool that you're using. What you need to do is figure out, what are you going to say and who you're going to say it to.
Right.
And how you're going to say it. How do you do good interviews? How do you have how do you add value to the audience?
Right.
Because
That's the end goal.
the average podcast has 127 listens an episode. 127 is average.
I'm gonna come
You're
to
at
that in a bit.
50% average. Mabruk.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, so why are you doing this? What are you doing? How is it differentiating from the rest of the market?
Right. Why would somebody want to listen to your podcast and not, like you said, thousands,
the
tens of
important
thousands
question.
other? Yeah.
That's the important question.
Right.
And then learning the craft,
Yeah.
and that comes through
And then-
doing the work.
And then there's absolutely no limit to how much you can progress from there and how much, I mean, look at Joe Rogan's setup. Hundreds of thousands of dollars for a podcast. Right?
Yeah.
But then it's not because of that equipment that he is who he is. It's because of who he is. He's now able to have that.
And
kind of
I
setup.
don't think Rogan's setup is $100,000. It's for sure less than 100,000K.
There was there's
100,000.
actually a YouTube video on that.
And how much is
Somebody had actually gone and done part by part
Really?
analysis of costing. Yeah,
it was 100K?
yeah, close to 100K
But I mean, that's cheap. I mean,
for the value that he gives.
not only for the value that he gives, but for media production globally.
Yeah,
Most studios are what, it's $1 million?
yeah.
Right? But what he's doing on $100,000 is so cheap. If you think about it as like the
I hope
amount of
I'm
reach that he has.
I hope I'm not devaluing his setup, but yeah, I think it's somewhere around 100K. But then again, he
What I'm saying is, like, even if he spent $250,000
Yeah.
on his setup,
Yeah.
if you think that the fact that he's able to post and he's able to stream, the fact that he's able to stream live on YouTube,
Oh,
do you
yes.
understand
Yes.
that would have cost to reach how many? Like 5 million
Yeah.
per episode?
yeah.
What would the cost of the cost of just distributing that signal
Right.
back in 1995?
Right.
What would that have cost? Millions of dollars.
Right.
For one episode.
Yeah.
So
And
if-
now you have that
Now it's
platform.
free.
It's free for everybody.
It's free.
Yeah. Great. Oh, wow.
It's
what,
free.
What beautiful insights.
So the thing is, so if you're looking to start a podcast,
Yeah.
it's what are you going to say? Who are you going to say it to? Why are you
Why?
going to say it? And I would start with the why.
Yeah.
What is your why? What is your goal? What is your proxy? Like, what are you aiming for? Because that is going, and you have to always go back to that
You're right.
to help
right.
reference you
Right.
to know whether you're being successful or not. Because if you think, okay, successful is if I have certain amount of plays, you probably should quit now, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a different measure of success, if you actually have a reason for doing it besides, well, I just want to have a lot of people listen to me. I don't
Yeah.
know why.
Yeah.
And so I when I was architecting this show, I was thinking, okay, what is my why? Why am I doing this? Who am I talking to? What do I want to say?
Right.
How do I want to say it? And that is the important, hard, emotional work that we have to keep on going back to time and time and time again
Right.
as creators to remind ourselves, okay, I'm not doing it because I want a certain amount of downloads,
Right.
but I'm doing it because I'm actually reaching a few people in a meaningful way. And if I don't show up, I'll be missed.
True.
And that's what you want.
Yeah, that's what you
need
want.
to ask yourself, if you don't show up,
Yeah.
will you be missed?
Yeah. It's quality versus quantity.
And I think, but I think that quantity leads to quality because you're putting in the reps.
No, in terms of content. But don't look at how many, like you said, don't look at the
Yes,
metrics.
Yes.
Don't look at how many people are listening to me. Don't look at how many subscribers I have on YouTube. And
But then there's the flip side to my
Yeah.
very argument, which is sometimes you do have to do that because you do have to realize that,
well, put in the work first and then evaluate.
yes,
You can't have any subscribers or any listeners without a content
without quality.
and without quality
And
content.
so you have to ask, how can I get quality?
Yeah. Put that in. And like you said before, set up a milestone. Once you achieve that milestone, then you can always reevaluate and then figure out what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
Right? Whether you want to completely quit or change directions or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So this region, you're not, I wouldn't say you're very old to Dubai.
No.
5-6 years.
Yeah.
Right.
6 years in the region.
6 years. So
a little
that's
more.
so that's not a lot.
It's not a lot.
around approximately the same amount of time that I've been here.
Oh,
But
good.
I have references going back to 2005. 2004 actually when I came here
Oh,
first.
really?
Yeah, I had a job for a couple of years, then I went back, and then I came back here in 2014. But my wife has grown up here. She did her
Wow.
schooling here.
Amazing.
Yeah. So there is that connection. It's been there for a long time. So, but for you, it was a completely shift, like you said, shift of culture, shift of practically everything that you grew up with, and then with basically acclimatizing yourself to this part of the world
Mm-hmm.
with its different, not just the culture, but the way of how people accept and how people work. How did how did you set up your company around that, and now where it's going, and how do you look, where do you see it going in future?
Can you rephrase? There's like a couple questions there. I'm trying to figure out which question to
So
start
the
with. So
question is,
there's one that you're talking about, you know, that culture change, and then but you're specifically talking about setting up the company.
yeah, because see, like you had said yourself in the beginning when you started off, and it was a completely new thing for you
Mm-hmm.
culture-wise. Of course, that would have taken some time and effort to adjust to it, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and you
But
were
that's more
also,
of an interpersonal thing, I would say, rather than kind
but
of
you were
like a
also
business
starting the
orientation.
company at that particular time.
Yes, I was doing multiple different things. I came over here because I had a friend who's like, "Hey, you should totally move." We came, my wife and I came, visited. We fell in love. It was Oman at that time,
Hmm.
and so it's been kind of like an ups and down journey. But I'm one of the great things about Dubai is that I have a lot of international clients. So I have clients not only here in the region, but I have clients who work in the region, headhunters who are
Right.
in work in Saudi and America, um, organizations in the States. So I'm very. It's almost like Dubai is an international hub for
It
me
really is.
to do business
Yeah.
globally. So I have an American-based company. My company actually is from America, and I have a branch that's here.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. And okay, related to your, so you basically it's a consulting firm.
So it's
Uh,
consulting mostly around brand
yeah.
communication, brand strategy.
Yeah. All right. And that also translates to multinationals working here as well as the local companies working here.
Yeah.
You have local clients as well.
I have some local clients. Yeah, I have a couple different local clients that are
Okay.
in kind of photography, construction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Excellent. All right. So Lucas, about this, because we said in the beginning we're going to give some takeaways to the people who are into content creation and looking forward to starting these things. Do we have? I do have. I do know. I got to know actually through you that we do have a community here specifically for podcasters. There are some.
Yep.
Yes, that happens. You got me connected to. What's that called?
The
One
Mina
one such.
podcast
Yeah,
forum.
yeah, Mia forum, and at the same time, we got connected also on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
One of the hashtags, I think, I must have for once used the right hashtag
Ah.
that it got to you, because otherwise I did not see. We were not connected earlier,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So how's that? You're part of that platform, the forum.
Yeah,
How does that
so
work?
there's this growing subculture of podcasters, not just here in Dubai, but in the region, and it's a matter of you finding them and reaching out to them. So,
Right.
one of the greatest ways to find podcasts and podcasters in the Middle East is going onto podcast platforms, going
Right.
onto Apple and searching for podcasts in the Middle East, going onto Instagram and
Right.
searching, and then once you find one, see who they're following and or reach out and ask them, hey, do you know any other podcasts, any other
Right.
podcasters?
Right.
And podcasters are some of the greatest people because they like to talk to people. So if you ask them, they're always willing to help. They're
Yeah.
always, especially here where it, podcasting really has not reached market saturation. Most people that
It
I
is
talk
just
to,
getting
they don't
started.
even know what a podcast is.
Wow.
So there
Yeah.
was recently a study that came out that about podcasting that says X amount of people in the UAE listen to podcasts, and I'm like, I'm kind of curious at how they performed that study, and I'm very
Yes.
curious at what their what their market that they asked, do you listen to a podcast? And then I'm wondering, well, where are those podcasts coming from that they're listening to? So there's many questions I have about this particular study, because when I talk to people, most people say, what's a podcast? Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah, what is that? How do I listen to that?
Or yeah.
And
That's the thing. How do I listen to that?
People who even know what it is think it's just a YouTube show.
Yeah. And yeah, more and more podcasts are also doing the video component along with the audio. But, you're right. A lot of people say, how do I listen to this? What kind of podcast do I listen to? Why should I listen to podcast and not just songs in my car, while driving to work? Why not just the radio?
Yeah.
But of late, there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of development in terms of podcasters and new podcasts coming from this region. Just today, I was listening to this interview on one of the radio channels of a particular podcaster, and the exact discussion was this exact same topic of why is it taking so long for people to actually realize that there's actual value and so much of value. And if you ask me, so it's a lot different from listening to audiobooks. Audiobooks are monologue. Yes, they can give you tremendous value depending on what you're listening to. But then when you have two people talking about a particular topic, you get to learn perspectives and personal experience. And I think the personal bit makes it, more valuable. So, you're here sharing your perspective. I'm here sharing my perspective. But then why isn't it growing at that stage, or what can we as content creators and that ties into another thing, a little bit of matrix. How do I make sure that I reach out to the people?
I think there's like, I don't know where to start to answer that question, because it's so, I don't want to say complex, but there's so many different layers within that. I think going back to why aren't people catching on and listening here? I don't know. I think part could be they just don't know what a podcast is. Part because people are really busy. Like our lives are really busy. Many people already have shows that they're listening to. They're already watching TV.
Right.
Some of it is that they're just not interested in the content that might be out there. They don't know what content's out there. The thing about podcasts is that there's the power of podcasting is that there's not a centralized platform. That's the power of it. It's all based on RSS feeds.
Yeah.
And so I actually don't have a really great answer. I think it would be great to know why.
Right.
I think the answer though for content creators of any type is, okay, you just need to continue to grow your craft, continue to put out great work, and just find 10 people. Right. Find 10 people who want to listen to what you have to say. And then if they don't want to listen, if you're like, these 10 people, I made this for you.
Right.
And you go to the person that you said, I crafted this thinking of you, and they're like, I don't want that. Maybe you need to go back to the drawing board and figure out something that your target audience actually does want. Because many of us as content creators, we can become greedy.
Right.
We can be creating content that is serving our purposes rather than creating content that's actually serving the need of our audience.
Right.
And everyone is essentially egotistical in that they care about you as you overlap with their world, as you add value to their world, as you relate to their world. So when we're storytelling, how are we storytelling so that the listener can see themselves in the story? How are we communicating in a way that's actually meaningful to the person that's listening and not wasting their time?
Right.
And this is something that I'm struggling, like I'm still processing through, that I don't have those answers for. But I think if we can find we're not trying to reach everyone. If you're a content creator, like your show or my show, you're not trying to reach everyone.
No, not at all.
You need to figure out what is the minimal viable audience, the smallest target audience that you can communicate to and make it worth your time. Yeah. What is that audience?
Right.
And then you need to craft something for that audience, that niche audience.
Right.
And if it's good, they will share it in time.
Right.
If it's good.
Patience. Patience.
It's
is
patience, yeah.
So you're 100 episodes in.
105 episodes in.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mabruk.
Allah barak feek.
And wow, it must have been a huge task. I understand from production perspective.
Yeah.
But then I would like to hear, how was this journey from starting off to this grand setup and now something that you can look forward to in the long run?
What was the journey like? The journey was like, my wife really should answer that question, as it's a lot of highs and lows. You know, sometimes I need to take my own advice and not look at the numbers, but I always look at the numbers. And my podcast isn't the biggest. It's not the greatest, but there are people out there who message me and say that I listen every day. There are people who are out there that say, your podcast helps me see life a little clearer. There are people who are out there
there you have it. I mean, that
DM me. And that is my proxy.
Right.
My proxy is not to have
that keeps you
the
going.
biggest podcast. My proxy is like, how can I help one or two people?
Yeah.
Because, it's actually tomorrow's episode. I thought it was actually today's, but episode that's releasing tomorrow, episode 102 on my podcast. For those listening, I talk about the people who have the most amount of influence in the world are the people who are the least seen.
Wow.
So the people who
Profound.
are the greatest culture shapers and change makers, the people who are making the biggest difference, are people who aren't lurking in the shadows, but they're working in the shadows. They're not people who are hiding in fear,
Right.
but they're people who are silently doing their work day in and day out. You know who this person is? They're moms.
Wow.
Moms are
Right.
the greatest. It's not Kim Kardashian. It's not the government. It's not Google. It's not whatever evil corporation. It's not the environment.
Right.
It's not oil. It's not the tyrannical patriarchy. Moms are the greatest, most powerful shapers of culture across the globe. They always have been,
Right.
and they always will be.
Will be, yeah.
And they are the most passed over, unseen subculture
Right.
globally. They do their work from morning through the night
Yeah.
without getting praise, credit, or recognition. They're also the most loved, by their kids. Everyone loves their mom.
Yeah.
But they're not seen as someone who's shaping culture. They're not
Yeah.
recognized as the heroes that they really are.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, wait, they are pouring into a few lives,
Right.
and then they're
Shaping
going,
the society, actually.
and then they're going into most, like 90%. I think I'm not exactly sure on the stats. If you listen to the episode 102, the exact stats are there, but something like 90% of childhood educators are female. 90%.
Yes,
And my
yes,
guess
yes,
is,
yeah.
I wonder, like, how many of those were actually at one point or are moms?
Right.
And so you think it's in these early developmental years that you're actually instilling culture. You're actually instilling values. You're actually saying this is right and this is wrong. This is how you should live. This is how you should treat people. It happens in that 0 to 5.
Yeah.
That is where culture is set. And then, when they get into their teens, they have to make their decisions. But if you train them when they're young, they'll go on the right path when you're older.
Right.
If they don't go on the right path, it probably means that you failed in some of your training when they were young. So when you think about that, when I think about that, and I think of, you think of MLM, multi-level marketing. How
Right.
does multi-level marketing work? It works because you have 6 to 10 people under you, and then you teach them to have 6 to 10 people
Right.
underneath them.
Right.
That's what moms are doing.
Right.
Moms are touching a few lives, and those lives multiply
Right.
and shape culture. So I take that concept of we need to have the courage to be absolute nobodies, to have the courage to do our work in spite of the opinions of other people.
Right.
but to do great work in the shadows.
Right.
If we have that, like moms do, with the resilience, that's what I want to have with my podcast. That's what I want to put out great and meaningful work that actually means something to the person that's listening.
Yeah. And if you don't show up someday, they miss you. They actually want, and that's your kick, and that's your motivation to actually show up, turn up every single day.
Yeah. Because I believe
you have people attached to your podcast. You have people attached to your message.
Yeah.
You're making a difference in their lives.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's going back to, my company and what I do. That's what I do for brands. I help brands understand that we have to sell emotionally, and then so people buy emotionally, and then you rationalize that with stats and numbers and facts, right?
Right.
And so how are you as a brand, as a company,
right,
whether you're in construction or whether you're headhunting, whether you're selling time-lapse cameras, how are you as a brand showing up and doing emotional storytelling?
Yeah.
How are you connecting with your target audience so that if you don't show up, you'll be missed?
Right.
So
that's
yes,
the key.
What I'm doing is to touch those people, and it's also to model to my clients, to potential clients,
right,
to say, hey, look, this is the way that you do it. This is how to build an audience. This is how to go deep rather than just go wide and shallow, rather than just throwing a billboard up and hoping someone buys. Like, this is how you do brand.
Right. All right.
And that's where the power is. The power is in branding.
Yeah. Connecting it emotionally, like you said.
Yeah.
All right. How do you balance your family and your work life? Of course, you have a lot going on here. So how does that work?
There's, the greatest decision, there's a very small handfuls of decision in your life that will actually matter. The greatest decision that a person will make within the top 5 is the person that you decide to marry. The person that you decide to marry is going to be the greatest, most important decision that you might ever make.
I can certainly agree with that.
And so, because when we got married, there's not, divorce isn't an option. Divorce isn't on the table. People who divorce, let me change that sentence a little bit. If you don't have a vision for 4, 5, 6, 7 generations from now, if you don't have a vision for what a broken family does to your children, if you don't have that in front of you, you don't have that understanding of the pain and the destruction that will then be passed on generationally to your kids and your grandkids, then divorce becomes a real easy option on the table, because everyone's going to come to a place in their marriage and in their lives where they say, maybe it's just not worth the cost.
Right.
Right? Because the thing with marriage is, the secret to marriage, you guys have been married longer than I have, right? And you guys will know that the secret to marriage is dying to yourself. You want to have a great marriage, you're gonna both die to yourself and both put each other's needs before your own.
Right.
Right? There comes a point where you're gonna say, I don't really want to die to myself. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the question was, how do you do it all? It's well, I have a great wife. And I think it would be amiss to point to anything else. I have a great wife. We have 4 incredible boys, and she is she makes me look good. She makes sure I get it. She makes sure I get a haircut. She makes sure I'm taking care of myself. She takes care of me. She has 5 kids. Really, I'm her 5th kid, right? And she pours her heart, her soul, her time, her energy 24 hours a day into our kids. And so I am extremely blessed to have a woman in my life who is one of the hardest working people that I know, and most releasing that I know. And so I think I don't know if that's the answer that you're looking for, but yeah. I think it's true that, how do you do it? It's like, okay, well, my wife does a lot of work, and I'm really grateful.
Yeah, and I think without this partnership, it cannot work for most of the households. Like you said, then it becomes very easy to just walk out. And that's what happened with us. I mean, the reason that we're both doing it together is because we're trying to support each other.
Yeah. And I
And
love that. I love that you're here. I think that's amazing. I really do. When I heard that your producer was your wife, I'm like, that's awesome. That's really awesome.
well, actually, so actually, this podcast was her idea in the first place.
Why aren't you sitting here?
Yeah, I tell her that.
We had another mic. You can throw
Yeah.
your mic, talk.
Maybe we can be on your podcast someday.
Yeah.
She can be there. So I mean, she came up with the idea, and I was like, let me think about it. So we technically we traditionally like to go into these logistical issues and
Mhm.
the right frame and the right stuff and all of that. And she was like, no.
Let's do it.
Specifically, if I talk about people who have been exposed to this part of the world, who've lived with inclusion, with different nationalities, different cultures, different religions. Think about tolerance. Think about accepting people and diversity and all of that.
Yeah. There's a couple words that have been said: tolerance and inclusion, right? So, right now, here in the UAE, alhamdulillah, it's the year of tolerance.
Right.
And I
Yes.
love it. I love it. It's awesome. If I was in America, I would hate it to death. You know why? Because tolerance means something completely different. That word has been weaponized by the far leftist liberal ideology, which means that you can't have a belief that disagrees with my belief, which is the very
Right.
opposite of tolerance.
Right.
Right? And inclusion, when you're talking about inclusion, you're talking about something that I'm totally all about. I'm like, yes, like we need to accept other cultures. We need to like love people. We need to bring them in. But when you're talking about inclusion in the States, you're saying that a man who decided to be a woman, who might have started taking hormones, can get in an MMA ring and fight a woman and clobber her because men's frames are physically
Yes.
bigger and stronger. Like the number 200 seed worldwide of tennis, like the top 200th
Right.
tennis player male, can beat Serena Williams every day of the week. Clobber her.
Right.
The best female player cannot beat number 200 male player. But now when you're using words like inclusion in that setting, it means something
Yes.
totally different.
Yes, yes.
So a lot of the issue is loose language, right? When we're using words, our meanings of the words, the things that we're attaching to those words, they mean something very different based on the audience, which goes back to branding, marketing, communication,
Right.
storytelling. It goes back to who are you talking to? And right now the issue that I have, not just on this podcast, but in general, is I don't know. I'm talking to two different people because I have listeners that are in America,
Right.
but the majority of my listeners are here. So the language that I use is very important because the words carry different meaning. The
Right.
same word carries a very different connotation and meaning, especially when it comes to a lot of these topics. And so to draw it back to if you're starting a podcast, to draw it back to if you have a business, if you have a brand, and you're looking to grow and you're looking to communicate to an audience, you have to know who that audience is, what they think,
Right.
and what they feel,
Right.
what words they use, and what do those words mean, so that you're able to communicate in a way that's not meaningful to you as a brand, but meaningful to them as an audience.
True.
We have to orientate everything to our audience, to our market.
Right. Right. That's a great insight. So we've had a great one
It was
this
great.
time. It was great meeting you. It was great with the podcast, and I think a lot of people who are listening to this podcast are gonna have a lot of
I hope
takeaways.
so.
Not just the content part, but also the family structure and all of the parenting advice.
I hope so. I
So-
hope so. It was a pleasure. Thank you
it
so
was
much for
great
having me
to
on the
have
show.
you.
Yeah, it was a
Right.
pleasure.
Right. So we'll close it off. The usual, if people like it, please share it in your friends. Please let other people know of podcast, not just mine podcast, but Lucas's podcast. I'm going to link it up in YouTube
Own the
on the show
future.
notes. Own the Future. Search it up. Subscribe. Make sure you listen to it. He's 102 episodes in. That's a huge, huge milestone.
When is this episode being
So-
released?
So hopefully, so today is 15th, yeah. So 30th, oh, so sorry, 1st of December, 1st of November is when we release this
Wow.
podcast. So 15 days from now. And by that time, I wish you all the best. You'll
Thank
probably
you,
have
Farrukh.
another 15 episodes out. If-
Yeah,
Hopefully.
maybe 10.
So, yeah. And thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Guys, if you want to reach out to Lucas, I'm going to link up his details. Would you want to say that on
Yeah, please
show.
find me, Lucas Skrobot, LucasSkrobot, robot.com, or on Instagram. And you can always search Own the Future or my name.
Yeah.
And it is a podcast made for and by change makers. And please show up. I have interviews, and I also have daily solo shows where it's just you and me having a little thought, wisdom nugget story of the day so that you can more clearly see your purpose and destiny in life and weave your future, weave your destiny. Yeah.
Excellent. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm at Farrukh Talks, FARRUKHTALKS, Farrukh Talks on all socials. That's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Search for the podcast Keynotes with Farrukh Ahmed. That's the purpose, to inspire, to share inspiring stories, success stories, and inspire and motivate you guys out there. So stay inspired, and I'm going to see you in the next one.